Want to welcome everybody to our first inaugural Damn David Advisor Movement live broadcast with my good friend and legend Andy Panko. I want to share a little bit about Andy as we get into this live discussion of how Andy went from 0 to 90. And no, I'm not talking about his sports car. He went from $0 to 90 million in assets in 2 years, leveraging his brilliance and a Facebook group. So here are some key stats on Mr. Penko.
Uh-oh.
He dabbled in stand-up comedy and has performed at Caroline's in Times Square. He was a contestant on HGTV's All-American Handyman Season 2. It aired in the fall of 2011. He studied finance at the University of Delaware and received his MBA from Rutgers University. He launched his independent RIA, Tenon Financial, in November of 2019. He started as a career changer from Wall Street to Main Street. What you're going to find about Andy that's unique is that he built his business almost entirely off of a Facebook community that was formerly called Taxes and Retirement. And Andy is passionate about educating people and sharing his advice in a very straightforward, no BS manner. So, Andy Panko, welcome to this live stream. I'm excited to talk to you today, man.
Thanks for having me on this damn thing. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's get right into the damn thing. So why don't you share a little bit, Andy, about your story, specifically about how you became a financial advisor, your career with getting into the advisor space, and just kind of your journey along the way. Because here's the thing. The fact that you've had so much success, people really can sometimes forget that it may be a process. So I'm hoping that you can kind of share that there may have been a few wines in your road as you were kind of starting to get here.
Yeah, definitely. So my backstory, both in terms of what I did in college, what I went to school for, and the career I had between college and 19 years later, starting up my advisory thing, a lot happened. Learned a lot, did a lot, saw a lot, and it all helped build my technical knowledge. Definitely, nearly 20-year career of fairly complex investment management, risk management, some insurance work as well. That all built my largely built the foundation of my technical knowledge. Plus, even my views and beliefs toward the industry, what I think it should be, what I think it shouldn't be, heavily influenced by my 20 years of personal experience in trying to find jobs, initially in college as an advisor, and then in working in the institutional corporate side of things, being in and around insurance for a bit, and then investment management in different capacities, dealing with the industry and the products it uses and the way it charges, et cetera, all helped build and cement in me what I think is the best way in many cases that things should be done. So yes, long way of saying I didn't start out of nowhere. Even though I was new to the advisory retirement planning space, I did have nearly 2 decades of related but kind of tangential experience in and around the industry. So how far back you want me to go with the actual resume and stuff?
Yeah, I would love for you to share your journey initially when you were in college and kind of what your thoughts are, if you ever even considered becoming an advisor, and kind of what led you the corporate route, and then, ultimately how you ended up back here.
Sure. So graduated college in 2000, went to University of Delaware for finance. And at the time there wasn't, or at least Delaware didn't have, a personal finance, CFP track thing. It was just a traditional corporate finance, for lack of a better term. It was about investments and derivatives and financial management and whatever. Mm-hmm. Wanted to be an advisor, or at least what I thought an advisor was. I ultimately wanted to help people make decisions about money. I didn't know what exactly that looked like, but gullible, not knowing any better, college student, went to the job fairs on campus, and there was a lot of big insurance companies, wirehouses, et cetera. recruiting for roles they called financial advisor. Interviewed with a few of them, went pretty far in the process with a couple of them. I won't name names, but it was two large insurance companies. It was two large wirehouses, and then also a decent size kind of RIA, investment advisor here in New Jersey. And except for that RIA, that was slightly different. But the other ones quickly realized they were either just pure commission sales of products, and or high stress environment of production targets of trying to gather assets, and or sell insurance, or at the time loaded mutual funds. This was late 90s, so mutual funds with 5% commissions were still fairly popular. And in interviewing and talking with people, including those that were recently out of school that were going through the first few years of the training of the program of the employment, I realized this is just sales. This is just push stuff, sell stuff, gather stuff. It's like, this isn't advising. This isn't giving financial guidance, which is what I thought I wanted to do. So I got kind of disenfranchised with the idea of what I thought the advisor industry was, and gave up on the idea of trying to be an advisor. Stumbled into an actuarial job at a large insurance company. My resume was floating around online. Job looked decent. I took it. It was, relatively close to home, and that was that. So that was doing pension cash flow, duration mismatch for pension products of an insurance company. Stayed at that company 4 years, did a few different things, one of which was helping manage a general account. One was securities lending, and one was private placement credit research for their own proprietary investments in private debt. While I was there, they paid 90% for me to get my MBA through a part-time program at Rutgers University, which was right, close to where I was working physically. So did that with MBA in hand, and there's no requirement to stay at this company after completing the MBA, even though they paid 90% of it. So this was now 2004, 4 years later, after graduating college. MBA in hand, wanted to see what it can get me. Just started looking around, working with headhunters, and ended up in a role at a large Japanese commercial investment bank doing fixed income derivative credit and market risk analysis, and doing risk analysis of the counterparties they dealt with, which were largely other banks and brokerage firms and hedge funds. So learned a lot about derivatives, about different counterparty types, like hedge funds, the strategies they have, the risk management they employ, all sorts of ways of how a hedge fund runs its operation. And then in effect did that from 2004 up through 2019, when I eventually left. Had a few different slightly, different variations of that. But for the most part, most of my experience was in risk management of derivative products and counterparties, largely hedge funds and private equity funds. And saw a lot of cool things, learned a ton, worked with some really great people, worked at 5 or 6 different large Wall Street or corporate banks along the way. Again, more or less doing the same job, but never really fully satisfied. Made good money, again, saw cool things, had a long commute. I live in central New Jersey. I was commuting to and from Midtown Manhattan every day, which was an hour and 20 minutes each way. And just after a while, I was like, I don't want to do this in another 20 years. It wasn't really fulfilling. Again, money was good, but I don't know. There's got to be more to life than this.
Understood.
Always sort of had the itch to again, or to try to work with individuals, thinking that would be more fulfilling and satisfying to directly help a person, as opposed to directly help a hedge fund or private equity fund get financing for its portfolio, or get good margin terms on a FX trade it wanted to do or whatever. And what sort of happened, this was now 2016-ish, my itch to want to get out of the corporate track into the sort of retail track, if you want to call it that, Wall Street to Main Street.
Yep.
Coincidentally jived with or synced up with my mom was transitioning to retirement and trying to figure out her Social Security claiming, which was one of the trickier scenarios, where she's divorced from my dad and she's of an age where she can still do the restricted application thing that we can't now. And she didn't know it, and I didn't know it. I thought Social Security was like a forced savings account the government set up for us. It goes to show how little I knew about personal finance and retirement planning at the time.
Yep.
But helped her research and dig into it, and like the light went off. Like, wow, learned a lot in the process about Social Security, but realized my mom's Social Security decision was like one of the most impactful things she can do for her finances in her retirement. not just, she worked with an advisor who charged 1.25% at a big wirehouse name.
Mm-hmm.
All I really did was overcomplicate her investment management, had her in a couple dozen different mutual funds, typical sort of anyone now in the industry will look at that and see, oh yeah, that's a pre-canned model portfolio that they run other people through. And I was like, that's not advising. Like, sure, investments are important, but he's overcomplicating it, not doing anything that other people can't do for as good or better. And anyway, so just realizing like the need to give advice about retirement, not just investments, not just sell product. That's what really matters. How can I do this? And that set me on a journey of just trying to find whatever I could. And I knew really nothing about the advisory industry, but tried to find any blog, any podcast, any article, any book I can find. And what really changed the trajectory of my personal and professional life was, I don't remember how, but I came across the XY Planning Network's podcast. And that was like, boom, like, hearing stories of other people who are advising and running firms and giving advice and structuring fees the way they want to do it for who they want to work with was like mind blown. It's not just sell insurance for commission. It's not just gather assets to charge 1.5% on them. And that was it. I was hooked. So from that point forward, again, 2016-ish, laser focused on, yep, this is what I want to do. I want to do it by myself on my terms, provide services I want to, I think people need for the people I want to work with, charge how I want to charge, et cetera. And I decided 2019 would be the year that I actually quit my old world to start this up. And I gave myself 3 years to save up some money, because I knew my income would be going to zero when I start this. Learn more about the industry, the regulations, the business models, the best practices, get some of the designations and formal education about this, et cetera. And that's what I did. So lo and behold, November 2019, I left my old world, flipped the switch live on my advisory thing, hoping to find business, and went from there.
So as you kind of started this journey and you were coming into your practice in November of 2019, what was your plan for client acquisition? I always find that in the advisor space, like, how are you going to get actual clients? What was your initial plan on like how you were going to meet folks and be able to advise them around their money?
It was a bit of everything. I knew the technical aspects well. My focus was from day one, traditional retirees, but with a strong emphasis on the tax implications of things around conversions and how Social Security is taxed and Medicare surcharges and just, tax efficient distribution strategies. And even though I wasn't in the industry, I knew the stuff well, because I was hanging out on like chat and message boards for FPA and XY Planning Group. And I was seeing questions come from like seasoned advisors that didn't know things about like how conversions are taxed or proration of, IRA distributions or whatever. I'm like, wow, like I'm not in the industry yet. It seems like I know more than a lot of these people. So I'm not like pat myself on the back too hard, but I realized technical aspects about tax efficient retirement planning I already knew fairly well. So I wasn't concerned about the technical thing. I knew, to your point, getting clients, business development, getting in front of people, that's the hardest part when you're starting out. And I didn't have a great plan. I was doing a little bit of everything based on what I read and heard from podcasts and blogs, that different things work for different people. So what I was doing initially was I was doing local library seminars about Social Security and whatever, just trying to get in front of some people. I was doing taking centers of influence out to lunch. There's a couple of estate planning attorneys and tax folks, and I was trying to get myself quoted through Help a Reporter Out, that service. Yep. That I got a couple dozen, 20 or so article quotes. I was on a few different Find an Advisor portals, such as XY's, FPA, CFP board. I was on NAPFA at the time. I'm not anymore. What else? So that was, and I had a Facebook business page. I had a LinkedIn page. I had a Twitter page. I was making comments, trying to elicit engagement. I was sharing articles that, I found online from other folks. I was writing some of my own articles, just trying to get myself out there in as many ways as possible, seeing what would stick. And nothing was really clicking or sticking yet. Now, granted, this was only a few months. I started November 1st, 2019.
Yeah, but when you're sitting there at $0 and zero clients and you're watching your savings go down, the impetus starts moving inside of you.
Yeah, it was. I gave myself 2 years. I had saved up enough cash that, my wife and I, my family and I, even with zero income from the business, I would just be burning through the cash we saved up for 2 years. I wouldn't be tapping the kids' 529s or pulling out a home equity or, hit my 401 or whatever. So I was comfortable enough. The first few months, I wasn't that scared.
Okay, good.
Plus, everything I heard and read, like from Kitsis and stuff, said that you'll know within a year and a half or so whether or not whatever you're doing is getting some traction. You won't necessarily be at full speed, but you'll know what's working, what's not. Worst case, it's like you're getting absolutely nowhere. It's like, yeah, maybe it's time to hang it up. This isn't for you. Or at least the path of business development or client types or niche or whatever that seems to be clicking, and you can kind of see where this thing's going to go. So that's why I gave myself 2 years of cash, because I was hoping by the end of 2 years I'd know is this working or not. Worst case, if it wasn't, I'd give up and go back to my old world. So a few months in, pandemic happened. No, I should say I had 3 or 4 family or friend clients that signed up pretty early, but I knew they were coming on board. But I had no real outside clients yet. So March 2020, pandemic happened. So I'm only 3 or 4 months in, and boom, no more library seminars, no more center of influence lunches. Still trying to get articles, but so it's like, man, all right, now what? I still wasn't that concerned, because again, it was only a few months in. I had my 2-year timeline, and I knew that this was happening to the whole world. It wasn't specific to me. Correct. Getting kicked. So then it was pretty clear, like, all right, I got to get more focus, put more energy online, because that's the only option at this point, is to try to get in front of people virtually. And I'd wanted to start a Facebook group, because I was already in a few other groups that I was like, well, this is a pretty cool sense of community type thing. You can learn a lot, share a lot, whatever.
Yep.
And I knew, or I thought, that group type thing would suit me and my strengths well. I hate and I cringe at the thought of traditional sales. I can't work a room. I can't, do the hard sale. I can't go and convince someone to, get me to close a deal. What I'm good at is my technical knowledge, my ability to explain it, to teach it. And I truly enjoy and find fulfillment in educating and helping, feeling like I'm making others better. So Facebook group, I thought would be good for that. It's a place where I can go share stuff, answer questions in a no sales environment. It could be this sort of collaborative community, multilateral means of communication. And so I thought it could work well. And I saw it work well with other groups I was in that weren't necessarily, advisor groups, just like communities of people hanging out and talking.
So it just happened.
This could be a thing.
Just happenstance. You just happened to, it just occurred to you. You were sitting there like, oh, this could be a whole model. So was there anybody that crystallized like, hey, this group could work for you, or kind of really created okay, that's it. That's the idea.
There was, I had the idea already. And then I floated the idea within the XY planning group's Facebook group. Just say, hey, anyone else here have a Facebook group? If so, I'd like to pick your brain to see what you do with it and whatever. And one guy reached out. I won't name names, because he tries to stay kind of like anonymous with his group, for lack of a better word. He was thankfully willing to talk to me. We chatted for like 45 minutes. He had, at the time, his group was already 18,000 people. And it was what I thought I wanted to build. It was a group of his group. He doesn't allow anyone else in the industry in it. It's purely like meant for potential clients and normal people, which I completely respect. But so he wouldn't let me join his group, but he was fully open with like what he does in it, how he runs it, and et cetera, et cetera. And he had started his group a few years prior. So whatever, 2017 maybe. And he said once it clicked on, once it latched on, it did really well. And he was getting all of his business and all of his prospects through his group. And people would ask questions, he'd give answers, et cetera. And what really, so that wasn't a surprise, but what was a surprise to me, or at least I should say something I hadn't thought about. He said he did live videos in his group every Sunday, I think it was, about certain topics. And he's like, that really drove the engagement, that element of video, being able to see someone, hear someone, ask them live questions, et cetera. So okay, good to know. When I start my group, I'll eventually start doing this video thing. So after talking to him, it was like, yep, this can work. I still didn't know it was going to work for me, but there was at least an example of someone who did it right and was working phenomenally well for him.
Absolutely.
That was maybe February of 2020. So I already had the group idea in mind prior to COVID shutting the world down. But what happened was my archiving software I was using wasn't yet able to archive groups at the time, Facebook groups.
Yep.
I want to do this all in the up and up. So lo and behold, it was they told me in March they'd be rolling out a beta test of group archiving effective April 1st, 2020. And I was like, sign me up, put me in that first wave. So as soon as April 1st came around, 2020, I started my group on Facebook. It was, properly archived, etc., and it was off to the races from there.
Awesome. So you started the group, and how did you start putting people into the group? So tell me the strategy. How did you come up with the name? Then how did you get your first couple of group members? And then what were you doing to kind of get the ball rolling? Because like anything, it's what is it? An object at rest stays at rest.
Yeah.
An object in motion takes a lot of energy to get something going. So kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, a lot of inertia. So
Yeah.
I knew in the business I wanted my firm's focus was going to be tax efficient retirement planning. So again, typical retirees, nothing crazy complex. But what I would do, and retirement advisors are a dime a dozen. We all know that. Everyone's after the retirement money because it's sizable AUM. My difference would be, and this wasn't just a hook for the sake of having a hook. This was like my genuine passion was the tax implications of all this stuff. And there wasn't a lot of people doing that, with a tax focus, doing real tax planning for retirees and distributions and whatever. So that's how I was going to stake my tent in this advisory space, would be the guy who does retirement planning, but does it better than most people with regards to taxes. And separate, this wasn't my selling point, and I didn't want it to be, but I also charge a flat fee that's not % of AUM. It's a fixed dollar amount regardless of asset size. We can talk about that later, but
yeah,
that was a nice kicker that helped me a lot as well. So anyway, I knew I wanted to portray myself as the tax efficient retirement planning guy. So I was like, what group name could I come up with that gets that across? And I figured, I don't know, taxes and retirement. So that's what I called the group from day one, taxes and retirement. There were already multiple other advisors with retirement groups, one like that guy I was talking about who was wildly successful with it, and others that were just kind of fizzling and not doing much. I was like, none of them were clearly tax focused. So I was like, okay, I'll be the tax focused guy. So that was an intentional part. I'll give myself a little credit for that, for coming up with like the branding of it, if you will.
Yeah.
Went live with it. And now the biggest question was like, how do I get people in here? So what I did different from the other guy I talked with was I was open to having others in the industry in it, so long as they're not, using it as a means to pitch and promote themselves. I wanted to make it a space where people can ask questions, share answers, learn a ton. I don't care who you are, what you do, just, don't solicit, don't use my platform that I built as a means of you getting clients out of it. That makes me angry. And I'm not a social media expert, but I figured that Facebook's algorithms will want to see some sort of critical mass in the group. Because if you start a group and you get 5 people the first week, you get 5 the next week, you get 20 people over the course of a few months, your group's going to get 0 love in the search results and, algorithms and recommendations. So what I did was I was already an active contributor in another retirement, it was a group about Social Security. I was one of the more active responders to people's questions. So I already had a bit of a following within that group, which was a few thousand people at the time. And so day one of me starting my Facebook group, I kind of, not too in your face, plugged it within that Social Security group. I got, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 people join within the first few days from there. And then I also promoted it within other advisor groups. So 2 different advisor focus groups, and then a couple different tax preparer groups. And my angles there, it wasn't just like, hey, please come follow me. It wasn't just like shameless begs for attention. It was, I'm not that dirty. It was, and this comes back to like me hating sales. Like it really bothered me to have to kind of promote myself in this group. But what made me feel better was kind of how I did it. So to the tax preparer groups, it wasn't just like, hey, come follow me. It was, hey, you all know how to prepare taxes. You don't know much. I didn't say it like this, but like, you don't know a lot about financial planning and whatever. Come join this group where you can learn a little bit to help bring more value to your tax prep clients if you want to learn about retirement focused, planning things like distributions and Roth IRAs and whatever. And on the flip side, for the advisor focus groups, it was, hey, you all know financial planning. You don't know taxes really well necessarily. Come join this group, which is meant to be the intersection of financial planning and tax planning for the retiree crowd. So all said and done, the first week I got 400 something people join the group. mostly from, other advisor and tax prep groups, but a good chunk from that Social Security group. So, first week I did fairly well, a few hundred folks. Then after that, I was just consistently, in other groups I was in, retirement groups, most of which were like consumer, end people, they weren't advisor groups. And I felt a little greasy about this, but I would take every chance I can get when someone were asking a question in those groups that was about like Roth conversions or tax withholdings or whatever. I would first and foremost answer their question, thoroughly, really good, etc. Then say, oh, and by the way, if you're interested, I just started a group where we focus on topics and discussions like this. Feel free to join. So I kept doing that. Again, it was never just a blatant in your face, hey, please join my group. It was like they'd ask, I'd give an answer, I'd give some value, then say, oh, by the way, I got this group as well. And so I'd get a trickling of people joining from other groups, I don't know, 15, 20 a week joining roughly from these other groups. And then things just started taking off.
So as you started getting these 15 and 20 folks, the thing that's interesting that you share with me so far is that you're treating this like your business. So other people in our industry may spend their full time prospecting clients, like you said, centers of influences, seminars, etc. Your strategy here was education, which is what you were passionate about, and just giving your knowledge and insights away freely to people that have questions. So as you were kind of going through this intentionally every day, answering these questions in different group and curating your own group, were you following the stats at all? Were you looking at the group numbers? Were you using that as a measure of success? Like how were you looking at that? And at what point do you feel like you hit, let's call it the L shape, where it just kind of started shooting up? And then what did that look like? And then how did you feel about it inside?
So when I started the group, I really didn't know how it was going to turn out. I just sort of picked a goal out of the air. Again, started April 2020. I was like, if I get 1,000 members by the end of 2020, I'll be happy. Get ahead of myself, but I got 1,000 members by July, and then it just kept going. So I within a few months, like the thing started clicking. But so to answer your question, I was still early in my business. Other than my 4 family and friend clients, I had 0 clients. It was pandemic, so basically couldn't leave the house, nor could anyone else.
Yep.
So I had nothing but time on my hands, and chose to make this kind of by necessity. My sole source of business development was put all my time and energy into this Facebook group in April, May, June, et cetera. So through early and mid 2020. I wish I would have kept track, but the amount of hours I spent in this group was disgusting. If you were to look at my stats of how much time I was on Facebook, you'd probably cringe. And I don't know what the stats were, but it was a lot. So what would happen is people would post. Initially, it was me mainly putting content out to the group. Again, sharing articles, some of my own, some of the stuff I found online, just asking questions, trying to like elicit engagement. And then slowly over the first month or two, people started asking their own questions. Like, okay, cool. And when they did, I'd be sure to jump on it ASAP. So all new posts that come in have to get approved. So I gave myself first shot to see it and respond to it. Because what I didn't want, I knew there's a lot of other advisors in there. I didn't want someone posting a question and other people stealing my thunder and answering it. Like I made the group, not to sound selfish, but like I want to get the exposure out of it. So all new posts had to get approved, and I was the only approver at the time. So I would see a post come in. I'd write this elaborate response, super detailed, thorough, et cetera, have it all queued up in Word. As soon as I hit approve to the post, I would immediately, paste in my response and let it go so no one else can beat me to it.
Got it.
And
it's a brilliant strategy.
Thank you. And when I knew it was working, it was, I don't know how long it was in, let's just say a month maybe. I had 1 or 2 people say something along the lines of, wow, that answer was better and more thorough than my own advisor gives. And it was quicker. And I was like, I'm onto something with this. Like that comment or those 2 comments made me realize like, boom, this group has something. So, and it was that. It was, a post would come in, we'd be eating dinner, like, oh, gotta go. Like I gotta respond to that. Like I was that on top of it to make sure that I was responsive and thorough. And just education. None of my responses were ever, hey, if you like that, set up a call. Never did lead capture with it, because that's part of my DNA is like, again, the sales process just makes me cringe. So it's just give away what I know, hoping that people would eventually respect me, realize I seem to know my stuff, would hopefully view me as trustworthy, knowledgeable, someone that they would like to work with, or not. If not, then whatever. But if they do, then great. Let me just keep being me. And that's ultimately what happened. Fuel on the fire was I started doing in June of 2020 live videos, which was the recommendation I got from the other guy, every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. And they were truly live. And again, it was pandemic. I had nothing else to do, so I didn't really care. Every Wednesday at 8, I'd be on my computer doing a live video. Each week was a separate topic about how Social Security is taxed, or Medicare benefits, or Affordable Care Act premiums, or whatever.
So I want to pause here. So a lot of advisors get stuck in, let's call it technicality. How did you figure out how to do lives, right? What sort of things did you consider? And then secondarily is, how did you come up with the content ideas? Was it you just sat down and said, well, this is what retirees need, and this is what you're going to talk about? Or were you pulling ideas from the group based on people's questions? So like content creation becomes a challenge in, let's call it the social media world, and figuring out what you're going to talk about, write about. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I loosely modeled it after one of my favorite podcasts at the time, and now still, is called the Retirement Ira Show. It's two guys out of Colorado, where they've been doing it for like 10 plus years. It originally started as a local radio show, and when podcast became a thing, they started doing it as a podcast, and now it's podcast exclusively. But that really resonated with me because it's super technical, in the weeds, real deep content, but presented in an understandable, plain English kind of way. And it's stuff that they focus on in their business with their clients, which is tax efficient retirement planning. And as I was going through my multi-year journey of getting ready for this firm and learning and figuring out what I wanted to do, I was heavily, heavily influenced by those two guys on that podcast and the types of stuff they talk about and the client situations they'd bring to the show, because they were living, breathing advisors. And to answer your question, the content I sketched out was stuff they would talk about. Lots of Social Security angles, tax angles around distributions, conversions, Medicare, ACA credits, etc. I wanted to be them, but in my own way, and do it through my Facebook group, whereas they did it in a podcast. And I figured by answering questions about that stuff, clients who were a good fit for what I offer and what I focus on would like self-select and find me, because they'd find this random guy from New Jersey with glasses sitting in his basement on a video talking about questions they had about ACA credits, or about why is my Social Security tax this way, or how's my Roth conversion tax. And so that's what I did. I chose topics that I wanted to focus on, that I was genuinely interested in, that I wanted to work with people about. And they are fairly common things that most retirees come across at one point or another. So it wasn't like it was too niche of a content base. So that was content. Tech wise, man, the first few year videos were painfully ugly, but that's all right. I use Facebook, has a native video stream within their groups. It's no frills. I don't know about now, but at the time, like, there wasn't ways to incorporate pulling stuff up on screen, or getting headers like we have, or whatever, labels like we have now through this platform we're using. It was literally just a camera and go live. And for like charts and stuff, I don't have one with me, but like I had this whiteboard, and I would literally draw like graphs and stuff and just hold it up to the camera like that. Like, look, you'll see this. It was incredibly janky, but it was super, super genuine. And I think that went a long ways. And I dressed like this, wearing t-shirts. It was COVID. Everyone looked like a slob. So like I dressed like how I dressed. I talk like how I talk. I had these real, like, just busted rudimentary like graphics that I drew. It was sort of comical almost. And that sort of became my shtick. Like, I wanted to get across clearly, I'm bright and I know my stuff. I'm confident in that. I can get it across well. And I don't want to try to pretend to be someone I'm not. I don't have a fancy wood paneled office. I'm not going to show up in like the fancy suit. Like, this is me. Hire me, for my knowledge, for hopefully you think I'm a nice, trustworthy, genuine guy. Let me be me. And so me being me was like these cheesy, crude, graphics. So I did that, and people actually I'm sure it turned some people off, but a lot of people really liked it. And that went a long way in helping build my I don't know what you want to call it, but my image. It was a real me. I wasn't building an image. It's like that's the actual me sitting here talking about on this video.
So you were sharing, so you started doing the live videos, you were going through that. What did you see happen in the group as you started doing these videos? And then did you do anything else with the videos afterwards? Did you end up sending them to YouTube or like doing anything like that, or making them short or digestible? So share a little bit about that, what like the effects of the video in the group, and then maybe if you did anything with the videos afterwards.
Yeah. Two-part. I'll get back to effect of the videos in the group, but what else did I do with them? So I also have and had a YouTube channel that I also started summer 2020. And again, still had nothing but time on my hands. On the YouTube channel, I was doing scripted, structured, produced 10-minute long videos about certain topics. Again, retirement focus, like Roth conversions and rollovers and whatever. Pros and cons of pension versus lump sum. Those were scripted, and I would make graphs and overlays to pull into the video. Very sort of educational, like academic, very dry. And I have zero acting chops, and I was literally reading from a teleprompter app, so you can see me like trying to not blink so I didn't miss the words. Looking back now, those videos are, it's painful to watch. The content was awesome, but like the delivery was terrible. But I had a bunch of those videos. So those were already out there floating around on YouTube. And then when I started doing these Facebook Lives, these videos were like an hour long, roughly. It was me going through my spiel about whatever topic I had. And I would take live Q&A. And that live Q&A was huge because that was like golden engagement and chances for people to see me, know me, ask me things, have me respond, feel like they already know who I am and get a relationship with me. So anyway, there were long videos. You throw in the Q&A, it was an hour plus, a lot of these videos. And I would just dump them up on YouTube, unadulterated, no editing, no shortening, just partly because I didn't want to mess around with that.
Yeah.
And just like, let me get it out there. This is the real me. Again, I don't want to like sugarcoat or try to make things look like something I'm not. So I just dumped them up there. And so they got more travel that way. And my YouTube channel started growing as well. It's now, I don't know, 17,000 people, subscribers, but
pretty good.
Still, Facebook was the core of my, it was the hub of my exposure, my business development. So yes, the videos got repurposed there. As far as what the videos did in the group, when I started doing those live videos in June 2020, that's when things really took off. And I started seeing a lot more people join, like group members were taking it upon themselves to recommend my group within other groups they were in. They're like, hey, this guy, Andy, just, did this video on whatever, or answered my question about XYZ. And they'd recommend it without me asking, like they'd recommend it to their friends and their groups.
Yeah.
And so
it's awesome.
The organic growth took off. Again, this was within months of when I started. So I had to stop, I was in a position where I could stop shamelessly plugging it myself within other groups because organic growth and referrals just took off by summer of 2020.
Which was making you itch anyways, like you said, because you're not a sales guy.
Yeah, I didn't like that. No. I had to do it. That was as salesy as I ever got in my, 3.5-year venture now, was me promoting my group within other Facebook groups.
So was there as you think about that journey of this group, was there a number, jokingly, where you said to yourself, look, Mom, I made it? Was there a number where you're like, oh my God, this is bigger than I imagined? And it kind of, like you said, it kind of started growing on its own and it snowballed. But was there a number where you're like, that was a huge milestone, and then it was just like a rocket ship from there?
1,000 was a big one, just because I arbitrarily picked that. I thought that'd be a cool goal to get by the end of that year. I hit it in a few months. I had no idea what was a good group, what wasn't. My only sort of benchmarks were other groups I was in. 3, 4, 5,000 people were big. 10,000 was huge by my standards. Like, I didn't really know. I'm sure there were other groups out there that were less focused on a topic, broader appeal to the masses, that were bigger. But in the retirement stuff and the Social Security group I was in, that was like 3,000 or 4,000 at the time. I was like, man, that group's a monster. So I had, if I can hit 3,000 or 4,000, 5,000 people, I'd be happy as a pig in duty. But again, that was nothing super like objective. It was just, I don't know, his group seems to be big. And so 1,000 was the milestone. And then I don't know, I don't even remember when I hit 10,000, but when I hit 10,000 and it just kept going and going and going. And now it's going to hit 40,000 this week. And it's consistently getting 250 new people a week, give or take, and has been for years. Well, it's been 3 years, but consistently for the last couple of years, it's well into 200 people a week joining. And now it's a beast that's taken on its own life. I've had to since fold in other people to help moderate, because every single joiner request gets manually approved, and it's a lot of work. More than half the requests to join are clearly spam or bots or fake profiles. So part of what makes the group good is we diligently moderate to screen out the spammers and the riffraff, and we have zero tolerance for political commentary, for any sort of name calling or fighting. We try to keep it just meat and potatoes. This is here to ask questions and get questions answered about tax efficient retirement planning. No noise and no nonsense otherwise.
Understood. So now that it's at 40,000, at what point did you start getting, let's call it, traction or initial client meetings when you were running the group? Because a lot of folks that are listening to this live discussion or will listen to discussion, they'll say, okay, great, I have an idea, I'm going to create a group. And I think one of the things that they're looking for is, how can I get in meetings or potential meetings with prospective clients? So at what point when you started the group did somebody either pop up on your website or end up in your email, and next thing you know, you're sitting down eyeball to eyeball on Zoom? So how long did it take? And then consistently, how much opportunities are coming out of that group for you as an advisor?
July 2020 was my first client who found me from the group. So that was 3 months in.
Okay.
Had an intro call scheduled, had the call, hired me on the spot. Like, I was expecting to have the call, we hang up and whatever, that they'd get back to me maybe, a week or two later. On the spot, like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, all right. And I happened to be away. I was on vacation. I was at a friend's house, a couple hours away from my house. So all I had was a laptop.
You get the nervous itch. I got to send you the DocuSign right now. Hold on.
Exactly. And I was in a bathing suit because I was taking a break from the pool at the friend's house to go do this call. It was 4th of July week. And I told the client that. I was like, oh, by the way, I stood up. I'm like, I'm in a bathing suit now. And they actually liked that. They thought it was endearing. So yeah, it was July. So a few months in. And the next few months, I was getting 1 or 2 clients a month. Again, all found me through Facebook. And then by fall of 2020, it was like floodgates were open. I limited myself to onboarding 4 clients a month. And at that point, I was also able to get quite selective in the people I took on to make sure they were truly the ideal client I wanted, and weren't too much of a stray from like the core of who I wanted to work with. So once it started, it started full steam, and it was 4 clients a month, basically all of which found me through Facebook. I did get a couple clients who found me through YouTube. They aren't even on Facebook, but they saw some of my YouTube videos and took it upon themselves to reach out to me and set up a call. And a few of them did have since become clients. But for the most part, it was really Facebook was again the nexus of all my exposure and client base.
So about 4 clients a month. How many initial conversations? Because obviously what I think is unique about you is that you are qualifying the clients as much as they were qualifying you. So how many actual Zoom calls or meetings or initial discussions to see if you're going to work with somebody were you getting, would you say, on average?
I kept track. I don't have it in front of me, but I was keeping track of every single prospect call I had, how they found me, how it turned out. And it was about a 1/5 of the calls I had ended up being clients.
Okay.
Now, some of them were just flat out not qualified, not good fits in the first place. I don't know what number, but some of them were, I didn't want to work with. Others seemed like they were really good fits and just never came around. And this is something else about me. Like, I refuse to follow up with people meaning we have the intro call, goes really well. I'll tell them, ball's in your court. Like, I'm not going to follow up with you, not because I'm not interested in working together. Like, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure had I nudged some more people, like I could have converted some more people into clients, but I didn't want that. My view is if they don't take it upon themselves to do it, they're either not that serious, they don't really want it, or it's like a sign of they're going to need nudging and pushing along the way if we do work together to get stuff done, because it's clearly not that much of a priority to them. Maybe that's not entirely fair to say, but point is I never followed up with anyone. So I'm sure as clients I could have had I given that thing in 2 weeks, like, hey, just checking in, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't. So ultimately about 20%, maybe a quarter of all the calls I had ended up becoming clients.
So if we do the math that you're onboarding about 4 clients a month, it's like 20 potential client conversations every single month. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. So I'm going to ask you the question, even though I think I know the answer. You also didn't put these people on any sort of an email list or anything. You were just like, if they met with you and that was the end of it. You weren't dripping on these folks that met with you.
Not at all. No, I do have and did have at the time a monthly newsletter, but I never added anyone to it. It was, I have a landing page. I'd promote that through, I would occasionally make mention of that in the Facebook group. I made mention of it on my YouTube videos, but that's something people have to opt into. I wouldn't add prospects to it. No.
Got it. So you're going along with the group. You're getting the massive amounts of clients. The floodgate is coming in. At what point did you decide? So a lot of folks don't know they're listening to us or will listen to us, that you stopped taking on clients. At what point from starting did you hit your target? How much time in? And then what did you do with all these clients that were reaching out to you wanting, to work with you?
I should say I also raised my fees twice, not on any existing clients, but for people that were new. So when I started my flat fee thing, I started $6,000 a year for single folks, $7,200 a year for married folks. And my goal was I didn't want anyone super complex. People with like 10 million bucks in net worth, I'd pass on. Anyone that owns businesses or has special needs planning or international angles, I'd pass on. I want like down the fairway, typical retirees who are W-2 wage earners. They own a house, maybe 2. Kids are usually grown out of the house, may or may not have a pension. Typical stuff that have $1 million to a few $1 million was my goal.
Yep.
And once I started getting clients, by the end of 2020, I was like, too many clients. So I was like, my fee must not be high enough. So I raised it to 7,200 single. Is that right? Yeah. 8,400 married.
Yep.
Even then, after a few months of still getting 4 clients a month, I was like, okay, let me do a little more. And again, I didn't raise it on current folks. So I still have some people paying me $6,000. Yeah. Some are even less. And then finally I landed at 8,400 single, 9,600 married. When I did that, that's when I seemed to have hit the equilibrium where the amount of prospect calls slowed down. The amount of people saying yes wasn't as fast. It felt like the market determined level of what people thought was right for what I offered. And so I did that, 2 fee raises. My goal from the get-go was 40 to 50 clients, no less than 40, no more than 50 was my target of what I wanted. And I was a true solo. I did everything. And when I got to like mid-30s and still had a pipeline of calls and calls I already had where I suspected some people would eventually come around and sign up, I announced to the world, I think it was 38 clients I had at the time. I announced to the world in February, what year is it? 2022, that was it. No more new prospect calls because I'm at where I want to be. I had 38 clients. I knew there's a handful more that trickle in. I'm good. So what's that? That's a little over 2 years, start to finish. From November 2019, starting at 0 to February 2022, I had 38 clients with another few in the hopper, let's say. That's when I was done.
Well, I'd almost pause there when I think about it. It was like you started in November. You started kicking this thing off really in the middle of the pandemic in 2020.
Yep.
So two years from, let's call it February to February, you're capped out. And that's phenomenal, man. So
thank you.
So you started you started at this point, you now had a limit, you're now still running the group. People are still reaching out. What did you decide to do with all these folks that wanted to work with you? Where were you sending them? Because obviously I would think as an educator now you feel like some sort of you want them to go to somewhere that they get taken care of.
Right. It was hard. I sound like a jerk for saying it, but it was hard to tell people, sorry, I'm full, like can't work with you. But I didn't just want to turn people away, be like, nope, sorry, can't help you. I wanted to make sure I had somewhere to point them. And I fully, one of my platforms I've decided to take on was the flat fee thing. And I wanted to support others who are or want to be on the flat fee route. True flat fees, not just flat fee for planning plus % of AUM for assets, like an all-in comprehensive flat fee, which is what I do. So I wanted to help people find other folks who are like me, advisors, retirement focused, flat fee only, and, ideally have some sort of tax knowledge above and beyond the average advisor off the street. And so I just started putting out to LinkedIn and my networks and a couple mastermind groups I was in, hey, any other retirement focused flat fee only advisors out there, let me know. I'm putting together a referral list because I'm getting a lot of prospect interest in me, in my business, to this Facebook group. I don't want to turn them away. I want to point them somewhere. And I wasn't looking for any referrals or revenue sharing. I just genuinely want to make sure people who want what I offer can find someone who offers something like that. That alone makes me happy. Yep. So I put on my business website, right on my Tenant Financial website, a list. It says on there, here's what we do. Here's our fees. You scroll down, sorry, we're at capacity. I forget what I said, but sorry, we can't work with anyone else at this point. But check out our list of referrals to other similar advisors. And so I have an advisor referral list, and it's still there on my website, which initially was like 5 or 6 people. And slowly, as word got out that I had this free list to get on, it's not like you got to pay to play. A lot of people started reaching out. It was like, hey, can I get on that list? Some people changed their business structure to meet the requirements of the list. Some were already doing it and just, didn't know such lists existed. Now it's like 30 something folks on that referral list.
I got to pause here because I'm sure somebody wants to know this. Are you still adding more people to the list, Andy?
Yes, I am back open for business. I don't even ask yet, but I just hired someone earlier this month. She's a second advisor. I'm still done personally taking on clients, but we as a firm are looking to take on 30 clients for her, which we'll get to. There's already a nice size wait list, which I hate the idea of a wait list, but anyway. So I still have on the website, if you want to work with us, set up a call, but I still also have this advisor referral list with 30 something people. So like if they don't work out with us for whatever reason, or we don't work out with them, I still want them to be able to find someone who does flat fee retirement focus, blah, blah, blah.
I love that, man, because they might not, at what I know from being in this business is that, sometimes it's like dating, right? There might not be any chemistry or connection. So what a phenomenal way to be like, hey, we might not work for you, but here's 30 other people who price their services just like me that you might think is a better fit for you. Awesome.
And some have slightly different niches or different personalities, or some people do want someone they can meet locally. The vast majority of all this takes place virtually. All these people on the list can work virtually. All my clients are virtual except 2 are coincidentally in New Jersey. And it makes me feel good to help support most of these advisors are newer in the business because this flat fee thing didn't really exist much until a year or 2 ago. Even now, it's on the margins compared to the rest of the industry, but it's growing. It's growing a lot. I want to help support that. So I'm glad to get these people business. And I know for a fact, a lot of people on that list have gotten good ongoing paying engagements from clients. And I'm like, I'm happy enough seeing that. Like, I don't need any formal involvement. I don't want revenue sharing, nothing like that. Cause that also starts tainting it. This goes to my anti-sales thing. I also get a little uncomfortable getting compensated for certain things like that. Cause once I were to take a cut of someone getting money from me referring to them, I'm now sort of on the hook if that blows up or, looks bad on me if that doesn't work out for whatever reason. And now I feel a little greasy for having taken money from it. So part of it's I'm in my own head about it. I know lots of people have like Smart Asset and others and Zoe, they build businesses out of this model, right? I'm not looking to do that. I don't want that involvement, that liability, that feeling of discomfort that it gives me. And I know a lot of that's just my own head, but still, anyway, I'm happy enough just to freely give away this business. I have an abundance mentality because there's truly an abundance out there.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about me and Michelle, you know, and the new advisor at my firm, getting the clients and the lifestyle and, you know, what we want out of this. So plenty happy to help others out as well along the way.
Couldn't agree with you more. There's 300 million Americans and not a single one of them's got a shot at financial independence without a great advisor. So to your point, there literally isn't enough of us, especially if like you said, somewhere between 40 and 60 is the magic number of clients that you could effectively service. So for those that listen, you are taking on new clients through your new associate, Michelle, and it sounds to me like you may be getting close to capacity there already since you got a wait list. What does that look like?
It's 46 people now.
Good Lord, man.
Now they're not all going to pan out. You know, the goal again for her is 30. We're thinking cadence of like onboarding 2 clients a month is a healthy flow. Of the 45, 46 on the list, I'm just guessing, you know, maybe a third ultimately end up being mutually good fits and sign up. The rest either aren't qualified or going to drag their feet, or we don't like them for some reason.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
So I'm going to pop a question because a question came up. So we'll just go ahead and show it. So Danny Michael, CFP, RLP is retirement planning education separate from tenant financial. So why don't you share with the folks who are listening some of the different avenues that you've expanded to, let's just call it, outside of the Facebook group and LinkedIn and all the other things that you're doing now based on what's going on in the industry?
Dude, first of all, tenant only has one end. Don't get it twisted, Danny. Just kidding. No.
He's serious, Danny. You better.
I'm serious. Do not get it twisted, Danny. No. So yeah, good question. So I had a hodgepodge of social media outlets. I started the newsletter day one, you know, November 2019, and I still do that. That's monthly. That's still formally associated with and comes from my business. I then started the Facebook group April 2020, called that Taxes and Retirement for, you know, I wanted that focus, the branding focus. Mm-hmm. June 2020, I started the YouTube channel, called it Retirement Planning Demystified. I did that because I didn't want to get pigeonholed as just the tax guy at that point. So I came up with a broader name, Retirement Planning Demystified. Then in January 2022, I started a podcast. I was already done with clients, but I was like, I already got all this content floating around in this big cranium of mine. I already got a lot of stuff I can recycle. Let me do a podcast just because I didn't really know what I wanted out of it. But I started that, called that Retirement Planning Education, because I realized over the last couple of years prior, education is really the heart and the common denominator of all the stuff I do in my business and in my social channels. So I was like, okay, let me call this Retirement Planning Education. So I now had this newsletter called Retirement Planning Insights, Taxes and Retirement Facebook group, Retirement Planning Education YouTube. I'm sorry, Retirement Planning Demystified YouTube, Retirement Planning Education podcast. I'm like, this is getting goofy. Let me try to common brand these. So I decided to keep the newsletter associated with my business, peel off the other 3, and make them unrelated outside business activities and rename them as well. So I decided Retirement Planning Education is the name I want to live on. So that was the podcast. I then renamed YouTube and Facebook to Retirement Planning Education. I make no mention of my business in those. Those are not business development. That's just me creating content, giving away education. I still don't know what I want out of that, but they're technically now under a separate LLC. They're disclosed in my ADV as an outside business activity. And I'm real careful now to, like I said, not make mention of my business. I do say in passing, like, oh yeah, when I work with clients, I do this, that, and the other. But those are definitely not business development tools for tenant financial at this point. I am separately monetizing them somehow. So YouTube, for example, I do get some ad sharing revenue. I also, the LLC under which I run these 3 retirement planning education things, I do also get some call it consulting income. It's kind of like a catch-all at this point. I'm also a paid coach / adjunct in Roger Whitney's got a paid membership group called Rock Retirement Club. I'm one of the faculty in there, if you will. and I do that under my outside business activity LLC. So anyway, to answer your question, yeah, they're all separate. Who knows where they're going to go? I never thought of myself as being a content guy, but it appears that's just sort of naturally where I've found my strong suit, my outlet.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. When did you decide that you were going to be a content creator or a finance influencer, Andy?
I'm a finance nobody, man. Come on. I didn't view Facebook as a content creation thing. I mean, it's still not really. It's just answering questions. YouTube was clearly content creation, but I did that was a business development tool.
Mhm.
The videos were branded with Tenon Financial logo on them. I'm now trying to strip all that off because, again, I'm making that outside business activity. But that was content. And after a few months of doing those videos, I was like, these things are getting some traction. Like there's some good views. Some of them went viral by my standards. Like if I get a few thousand views, that's viral to me. Most of the videos get a few hundred views.
Yep.
But it's not millions of views. And so I started doing that. And the more I made videos, I was like, people are watching and consuming these videos. There must be something to it. And my newsletter now is 5,000 people. Like that's another form of content that's got some following. So the podcast seemed like a logical extension of making content. Again, not knowing what the end game was, I was like, I already got the content up here. Let me just get it out verbally now through another venue. And so that's what I did. And now retirement planning education is sort of like the bundled umbrella of this content. And I also made a website for it as well, retirementplanningeducation.com. You can find all this stuff rolled up into one site. So I guess I am a content guy now. I don't know what I want to do with it though, other than slowly try to figure out ways to monetize it, I suppose.
So I just want to pause. I'm putting some comments up on the screen. One of the things for those of you that are listening to this live discussion is I hope that you're taking from Andy that is just a genuine desire to help people and to share what you know. And I think what happens is you go into our profession. If you came in, like Andy said, he got his first experience with going to what he thought was financial planning, and it really was just becoming a financial salesperson, which the experience you had, Andy, is very common across the board as you start talking to other advisors who came into this business or people who were interested in becoming an advisor that ended up not becoming a advisor as a result of what they saw is a genuine desire to share your insights with folks. So for folks that are interested, because we're getting close to our time, for folks that are interested in following you, what sort of channel should they do? Because I think imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So where can folks follow you to learn how you do what you do, to kind of see how you create your group, etc.? Where can folks connect with you?
Retirementplanningeducation.com is probably the best place. From there, there's direct widgets and feeds into, but you can also get links to the Facebook group, the YouTube channel, the podcast. And I started doing a monthly blog, if you want to call it that. And then my company's newsletter, if you're interested, is you can find on tenonfinancial.com. You can subscribe to that there. So you can see what I write. And all that stuff is made by me. Like there's no ghostwriting. I don't like writing the newsletter, but I still do it every month. I write that. I make the videos. I do the podcast. I do it all myself. So that's the best way to do it. As far as Facebook, I've had a lot of people ask how to replicate, how to do it. And I've had probably 24 conversations with folks trying to mimic. Some are getting some success. Others, they just fall flat. And I frankly don't know the secret sauce of what exactly made mine work so well, whereas others struggle to get more than a couple hundred people. I mean, the things that help were my technical knowledge, I know, is top notch. My personality, I think, helps. The amount of time and energy I put into it and responsiveness and making it zero sales helped. And the shameless plugging helped initially before organic growth kicked in. But I see others trying to do the same thing and it's not quite working. And I frankly don't know exactly why. So I don't have the keys to success to say, do this and this will work for you. All I know is what worked for me. I have guesses why I think it worked, but it doesn't seem to be repeatable for everybody for some reason.
So let's just say you were going to start over and do this all over again. We fast forward, Jack. It's October of 2019. You're about to take the great leap and do this all over again, is there anything that you would do differently? Starting that if now looking back at it with experience.
I mean, obviously would have started the Facebook group sooner, but I also think part of why that worked was, and I hate to say this, but the pandemic was the best thing that could have happened to my business and my business growth, because it forced everyone to be home, forced people to get comfortable being online, living online, learning Zoom, learning to hang out in Facebook groups, because that was social interaction in lieu of not being able to be in person with stuff. So I don't know that the Facebook group would have worked as well or as quickly had I started it. Now, the other guy clearly, his worked since 2017, so it could have been done. But no, I don't regret what I did. A lot of it's luck and timing, again, with the pandemic and my own archiving software going live when it did with covering groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy. In life in general, like looking back, sure, there's things I could have done differently, but I don't regret any personal or professional decisions I made, because they all help make me what I am today. And every experience, good, bad, or indifferent, in some way helped shape and form and influence what happens from this point forward in my life. So no regrets, no changes.
I love it. I'm gonna close this out here. I just want to thank you, Andy, for sharing your knowledge with the advisor community today.
My pleasure.
The David Advisor movement, aka Damn the Status Quo, is really about empowering advisors, because I feel like our industry has turned into David and Goliath. There's a lot of really quality advisors like yourself who are coming into the industry, and they don't have access to the information and the resources. And so that is what we're trying to do here. So I appreciate you for being a champion of great advice, being a good human being, and sharing your knowledge with others freely. So I'm grateful for your friendship and for you being a champion of what we're trying to do. For those of you that are listening, I want to thank you for joining us. And I also want to share with you all, you're going to want to tune in for our next one that we're doing on April 27th. We will have a phenomenal speaker that you will want to hear from, that will share with you some unique client engagement advice as you're looking to grow. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I appreciate you all, and take care.
Thank you.